Just a dollar for my eyes, ma'am. These were the words of a blind man begging at an airport, unaware that his plea would spark a chain of events with America's press secretary that would change his life forever. Elias Carter stood outside the airport terminal, his fingers curled around a weathered stick he used to navigate the world. The hum of rolling suitcases and hurried footsteps filled his ears, a constant reminder of the life moving past him. He was 58, but the years had carved deeper lines into his face than his age suggested. A factory accident had stolen his sight 7 years ago, and with it, his job, his savings, and his dreams. Now he relied on the kindness of strangers, holding a cardboard sign that read, "Please help, need money for eye treatment." Most days he collected a few coins, maybe a crumpled dollar or two. It was never enough. Treatment for his condition, corneal scarring, cost thousands, a sum as unreachable as the stars he could no longer see. But Elias didn't give up. Every morning he took his spot, called out softly to passers-by, and prayed for a miracle. That same morning, Karoline Leavitt stepped off a plane, her heels clicking on the tarmac. At 28, she was the youngest press secretary in U.S. history, a role that demanded poise and precision. Her day was packed, a press conference on trade policy, interviews with major networks, and a stack of briefing notes waiting in her car. She moved through the airport with purpose, her aides trailing behind, phones buzzing with updates. Caroline was used to the chaos, thriving in it. But beneath her polished exterior was a woman who hadn't forgotten her roots, growing up in a small town, watching her parents scrape by, medical bills piling up when her brother got sick. Those memories lingered, though she rarely had time to dwell on them. Elias's voice cut through the airport noise, faint but clear. "Just a dollar for my eyes, ma'am." He didn't expect much. People usually hurried past, their footsteps fading before he could finish his plea. But this time the footsteps stopped. Caroline, halfway to her car, turned back. Something in his tone, resignation mixed with a flicker of hope, caught her. She approached him, her aides exchanging glances, unsure why she was pausing her schedule. "What's your name?" she asked. Elias hesitated, surprised by the question. "Elias Carter, ma'am," he said. His voice was rough, unused to conversation. Caroline knelt slightly to meet his level, though he couldn't see her. "What happened to your eyes, Elias?" she asked, her tone gentle but direct. Elias hadn't been asked that in years. Most people didn't care enough to listen. He told her in halting words, the factory machine that malfunctioned, the flash of pain, the darkness that followed. No insurance, no family to lean on, just him and his daughter, who was working 2 jobs to keep them afloat. Treatment was possible, he said, but the cost was a mountain he couldn't climb. Caroline listened, her face unreadable. Elias expected her to say something kind and move on, like others did. Instead, she reached into her wallet, pulled out a $20 bill, and pressed it into his hand. "I'll see what I can do," she said, asking for his phone number. Elias gave it, though he didn't believe she'd call. People promised things all the time. They rarely followed through. In her car, Caroline stared out the window as the city blurred past. Elias's words stuck with her. "A dollar for my eyes." She pulled out her phone and searched for corneal scarring treatments. The numbers hit her hard. $10,000 to $20,000, sometimes more. And that was just for the surgery, not counting follow-ups or rehab. She thought of her own family. The nights her parents stayed up worrying about bills when her brother needed surgery as a kid. They'd been lucky, scraping by with help from neighbors. Elias didn't have that. Caroline opened her notes app and typed, "Find Elias Carter, get him to a clinic." She called her aide Sarah and gave clear instructions. Track him down, find a specialist, and figure out what programs could cover his costs. Sarah, used to Caroline's intensity, didn't question it, though she wondered why this one man mattered so much. Elias went home that evening with $27 in his pocket, the $20 from Caroline feeling heavier than the rest. He sat in his small apartment, the air thick with the smell of damp walls and cheap takeout. His daughter Maya was at her night shift, waitressing after her day job at a call center. Elias hated that she worked so hard for him. He wanted to give her a better life, not be a burden. The $20 wouldn't change much, but it was enough for groceries, maybe a bus pass. He tucked it away, trying not to think about Caroline's promise. She was probably just being polite, he told himself. People like her, important, busy, didn't have time for people like him. 3 days later, Elias's phone rang. He fumbled to answer, his fingers shaky. A woman's voice introduced herself as Dr. Patel from a local eye clinic. They'd received a referral for him, she said, and could offer treatment at no cost, funded by a donor program. Elias froze, certain it was a scam. "Who sent you?" he asked, his voice sharp. Dr. Patel didn't know the donor's name, only that someone had called to ensure Elias got care. She urged him to come in for an evaluation tomorrow. Elias hung up, his heart pounding. He didn't trust it, but a small part of him, the part that still dreamed of seeing Maya's face again, whispered to take the chance. At the clinic, Elias sat in a sterile waiting room, the hum of medical equipment strange after years of street noise. Dr. Patel was kind, explaining that his scarring could be treated with a corneal transplant, though success wasn't guaranteed. She mentioned a kind woman who'd pushed for his case, but Elias didn't connect it to Karoline. He was too overwhelmed to ask questions. When they scheduled his surgery for the following month, he felt a mix of fear and hope, emotions he hadn't let himself feel in years. That night he called Maya and told her everything. She cried over the phone, promising to take time off for his recovery. Elias didn't cry, but his voice cracked when he said, "Maybe I'll see you soon." Karoline, meanwhile, was knee-deep in her own world. Press conferences, policy briefings, and late-night strategy sessions filled her days. But she checked in with Sarah daily about Elias. When Sarah confirmed he was scheduled for surgery, Karoline nodded, satisfied, but didn't linger on it. There was too much to do. Trade talks were faltering, and the press was circling. Yet during a quiet moment, she found herself thinking about Elias again. She'd seen the stats. Millions of Americans couldn't afford basic health care, including vision care. Elias wasn't alone. At her next press conference, she slipped in a line about healthcare access, tying it to economic growth. The reporters barely noticed, but it was a start. Karoline wasn't one for grand gestures. She preferred results. Weeks passed, and Elias's surgery day arrived. He lay on the operating table, his hands trembling despite the sedative. Dr. Patel's voice was steady, guiding him through each step. The procedure took hours, and when it was over, Elias woke with bandages over his eyes. He'd have to wait days to know if it worked, but the possibility of sight felt closer than ever. Maya stayed by his side, reading to him from her favorite book, her voice a lifeline. Elias clung to it, picturing the world he might see again, a world he'd almost given up on. Karoline didn't know about the surgery's outcome yet. She was in D.C. preparing for a major address, but Sarah sent her a memo. Elias's procedure went well, and early signs were promising. Karoline read it between meetings, a small smile breaking through her usual focus. She didn't expect thanks. She hadn't done it for that. But she added a new item to her agenda. Meet with healthcare advisors to discuss vision care programs. It wasn't flashy, but it could help people like Elias. That was enough for her. 10 days after the surgery, Elias sat in Dr. Patel's office for the bandage removal. His heart raced as the gauze came off, light piercing his eyes for the first time in years. It was blurry at first, shapes and colors swirling like a dream. Then Maya stepped forward, her face coming into focus, her brown eyes, her crooked smile. Elias stared, unable to speak. He reached out, touching her cheek, tears spilling down his face. "I see you," he whispered. Maya hugged him, sobbing, and even Dr. Patel wiped her eyes. Elias's vision wasn't perfect. Details were fuzzy, and bright light hurt, but it was more than he dared hope for. He could see the world again, even if it was through a soft haze. That evening, Elias watched a news broadcast, something he hadn't done in years. Karoline's face appeared, speaking about job growth and opportunity. Her voice was familiar, though he couldn't place it at first. Then it hit him. The airport, the $20, the promise. He leaned closer to the screen, his new eyes tracing her features. She was the one. Elias didn't know her name or her title, but he knew she'd changed his life. He asked Maya to help him write a letter, something he hadn't done since losing his sight. In it, he poured out his gratitude, describing the moment he saw his daughter's face. He didn't expect a reply, just needed her to know. Karoline received the letter a week later, tucked among dozens of memos and emails. She read it alone in her office, Elias's shaky handwriting telling a story of darkness and light. He didn't ask for anything, didn't even know she was press secretary, just called her the kind woman from the airport. Karoline sat back, her throat tight. She'd made a difference, not just for Elias, but for herself. His letter reminded her why she'd entered public service. Not for headlines, but for moments like this. She kept the letter in her desk, a quiet anchor amid the storm of her job. Months later, Elias's life was different. He volunteered at a community center, teaching others with disabilities how to navigate the system. His vision held steady, letting him read, walk without a stick, and even cook for Maya. He still faced challenges. Money was tight, and his eyes tired easily. But he faced them with a strength he hadn't known he had. One day, Maya saw an event listing, a town hall on healthcare, featuring Karoline Leavitt. She convinced Elias to go, saying he deserved to meet her again. At the town hall, Elias sat in the back, nervous but proud. Karoline spoke passionately about new healthcare initiatives, including a pilot program for vision care. When the floor opened for questions, Elias stood, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "My name's Elias Carter," he said. "You helped me see again, ma'am. Thank you." The room went quiet. Caroline's eyes found his, recognition dawning. She stepped off the stage, ignoring her aide's murmurs, and walked to him. "Elias," she said, her voice warm, "you're the one who inspired this." They talked briefly, not as press secretary and citizen, but as two people whose paths had crossed for a reason. Elias left the event with Maya, the sunset painting the sky in colors he'd missed for years. Karoline returned to D.C., her resolve stronger than ever. That chance encounter at the airport hadn't just given Elias his sight, it had shown Karoline the impact of one small act. And it proved that sometimes when the world feels dark, a single moment of kindness can light the way forward.